Welcome to Dollars and Cents with Freedman Financial, the home for financial advice in a language you can understand. Created by Marc Freedman of Freedman Financial, he and his team of certified financial planner professionals will discuss timely topics that help individuals and families make smart financial decisions. And now, get ready for this week's edition of Dollars and Cents with Freedman Financial.
Welcome back to another edition of Dollars and Cents with Freedman Financial. My name is Marc Freedman.
And I'm Marion Gilman.
And we're here to provide you with some financial advice in a language you can understand. Well, the past few weeks have been pretty choppy in the markets, haven't they?
It certainly has been. And, you know, that combined with tax season, it's been a little bit hectic around
yeah,
here, huh?
I actually think many people called us and they said, oh, Marc, your phone must be ringing off the hook. Well, yeah, it's been busy, but it really wasn't about people calling concerned about their accounts, was it, Marion?
No, it was people who needed money to pay their taxes. So, unfortunately, everybody made a fair amount of money last year. Market returns were good.
Why would you say unfortunately?
Well, because now they're taxed on it. So, you know, they think that that's a bad thing, but in reality, it's a good thing.
Yeah, you know, so many people, we ask our clients, and many of them have taken our advice, where they drop off their tax return because they're really surprised in some cases as to how much they owed in taxes. But there's a few things that people often forget about as to interest, dividends, capital gain distributions that are created in their portfolio over the course of a year that they don't think about as potentially being taxable.
Correct. And, you know, so you don't pay tax on that over the course of the year as you might with Social Security tax withholdings or paycheck tax withholdings or even distributions from retirement accounts. So that interest income or dividend income or capital gains all happens at the end of the year, or, you know, and then you get taxed in a lump sum when you go to do your taxes.
Yeah, in fact, if you compare your 2023 tax return to your 2024 tax return and you look on the line that says interests and dividends, I'm going to bet that that number is almost twice as much in some cases as what it was the year before. And that's simply because, look, many people decided to build up money in their bank account, whether you bought CDs or money market funds, and you said, you know what, I don't want to earn 0%, because remember, that's what we were getting for the longest time on our bank accounts. Now you can get 3 and 4% in some cases on money markets, on CDs, bond prices are high, bond dividends are higher than they were.
Much higher, that's correct.
And all of those things are taxable.
Right. And so it's a good thing. You actually have more money in your pocket. You just have to pay some tax on it too.
So before we jump into the next theory, Marion, I got to tell you, you have this hair that's hanging in the front of your face right there. No, right over here. So it's like, don't you feel that? It would be tickle. You don't even see it. It's right here. We're going to move that out of the way.
Thank you
for
very
you.
much.
So, you know, this is real live television here. And normally I wouldn't pull hairs out of her face. But it was driving me nuts. I was starting to get ticklish.
I couldn't feel it.
When it was sitting there. Nevertheless,
what can I tell you?
You know, our clients are great. And they oftentimes reach out to us with questions, with concerns, and we've held webinars, and we've really tried to engage our clients. But one of the things that they often try to blame a lot of the problems that they have, they say, with their accounts or whatever's going on, are things that they simply can't control.
That's exactly right. You know, you just, the tax burden, sometimes you just can't control that.
Right.
And it's not anybody making mistakes necessarily. It's more just that you haven't anticipated it.
It's all about planning. And frankly,
right.
That's what we do here at Freedman Financial with all of our clients. As many of you know, if you've been watching our podcasts for the past, 14, 15 years that we've been doing this, you know that every relationship that we have with our clients starts with a financial plan, making sure we know where everything is and what everything is worth. And by the way, it's not just what you tell us that you have, because frankly, we all don't know, or we think we might understand what we have until we see it on documentation. We read that registration of how those accounts are owned, where the investments are, where your bank accounts are, where your 401k, your benefits, your insurance, your pay stub withholding, all of that stuff is. We need to know that because, frankly, we can't do proper projections for you. We can't give you the right advice unless we know where everything is and what everything is worth.
That's exactly right. And also what you're spending and what you anticipate spending over the course of time.
Yeah, because look, if you said to us, Mark and Marion, I think I spend $10,000 a month to cover my expenses, and then we build an analysis for you based upon our understanding that you think you spend $10,000 a month, and 5, 10, 15 years down the road, you go, wait a second, why is my plan not working? My accounts aren't growing as best as you said they were. Well, perhaps part of the problem was you were spending more than $10,000 a month. And that's why when we do our analysis with you, we want to make sure that what you think you spend is what you actually really spend. And what do we find out about that, Marion?
Well, we find out that most people don't really have a complete picture of what they're spending over the course of the year. They think about, when you ask them how much they spend, they think about just the bills that might come into the household on a monthly basis. They don't think about insurance that might come in once a year,
yeah.
or some big purchases, or home repairs, or travel, big vacation. They don't think about any of that, but that all enters into the equation.
And so when we show clients, because one of the things that we do when we're meeting with clients is we ask you to provide us with 6 months bank statements.
And most people say, why would you need that? Why do you need to know what we spend things on, what we spend our money on? And we don't care what you spend your money on.
We're just looking at that top line number that says
That's right.
Total amount of money that went out of your bank account versus total amount of money that went into your bank account. So maybe you are saving some money into some investment account, or maybe you're putting money into a 529 account for your kids, but most of it, you're probably paying your credit card bill and your mortgage and your gas payment and all of those things. But when we add that up and average it out over 6 months, generally we're finding that our clients are underestimating their spending by somewhere between 25 and 40%. Now that might sound like a huge number, and it is, because if I'm using the number that you told us versus what you actually spend, we're not doing you a good service. We need to know where everything is, what everything is worth, and how you spend it.
And think about that compounded over 25 years of retirement.
Absolutely.
That is a huge number, and that can really derail any even good plan that's there.
So when you're thinking about planning, I want you to think about what we call the retirement equation. The retirement equation allows you to look at 6 different components of different areas in your life when you're prepared and ready, and it's time to start thinking about how am I going to achieve these goals. And you can focus on 3 areas of those 6. There's probably 2 categories in each of these, when I talk about 6 things, 2 categories that make 6. Then break it out a little further, it's 3 categories. So what are some things that you have total control over?
You have total control over your spending and how much you spend versus how much you save.
Absolutely.
That is something that is totally under your control.
And what's something else that we can totally control, Mary?
We can totally control how our money is invested as well. So, we can decide whether or not we want to keep our money at the bank or whether we want to invest it in a CD at the bank, say, or if we want to invest in bonds, or if we want to invest in stocks, or what mix of those investments you want to have and what's appropriate.
But even think of this. Many people will call us. They hear that a particular technology stock is popular or a particular item is in favor, and they'll say, well, should I be investing in this? I'd like to buy shares of this or that security. And in some cases, these people are investors that were primarily in cash. And all of a sudden, they want to take a risk on a high-flying stock. These are items, and we'll give you the right advice that's appropriate for you, but these are items where you have total control. If you want to take that risk, understand risk doesn't mean we're always going to win. It means we can lose. And so having total control is building the proper asset allocation that meets your needs, not what your neighbor needs, not how your parents are invested, not what some financial guru talked about, I love that word, that talked about on TV or some podcast. It's what is appropriate for you.
And also staying the course with those investments through a long-term horizon.
Right.
If you get very emotional about your investments during a downturn, that can derail a whole plan.
Right, because we're not speculators, nor should you be. We are
Right.
long-term strategic investors building a strategy that helps you achieve your long-term or perhaps even short or mid-term goals, wherever those goals might be.
Right.
Now, Marion, there are some things that are out of people's control, and I think this is where most people complain the most, and they point blame on why they're not doing so well or are doing well, but they're all pointing blame on things that are out of their control. And what are those things?
And the first thing I want to point to is market returns. So what happens in the stock market? What happens to the returns on your portfolio in any particular year? That is totally out of your control. You cannot control the market. You can control your response to the market, but you can't control what happens in the market. So you need to think about it beforehand, set up an appropriate asset allocation that you can live with through the ups and downs of the market, because that's the reality of what goes on in the stock market or bond market.
Now, once we have our elected officials in office in Washington, you've lost control. That is out of your control. Who's in charge, whether the House or the Senate have control of certain things, how decisions are made. We just have to adapt to it. And you know who's really good at adapting to ever-changing policy in Washington is corporations. Corporations are remarkable at readjusting and rethinking. How do we think strategically if this happens or if that happens? As individuals, we're always focused on the now, and we're blaming this person or that thing or that entity on things we really can't control. So focus on the things you can control. What's something else we have?
And
Go ahead.
focus on the long term. because
Absolutely.
That's what corporations do. They have a long-term plan, and they just ignore that interim volatility.
And so
Yeah.
what else are things that are beyond our control, Marion?
And the other thing is tax policy and benefits policy. So you cannot control taxes. You know, you just can't control the rate of tax, whatever your tax rate is, you can't control that. You're not going to change it. The federal government or Congress can change it. You can't.
Yeah, the rules around estate taxes and inheritance
That's
taxes and federal
You can move
excise
states.
taxes. You can move state. I mean, there's things that you
There
can
are
control.
things that you change.
But
yeah.
once you're established, the tax is the tax.
That's right.
But there are some things where you have some control. And what are some of those things, Marion?
Yeah, so one of the things that you do have control over, somewhat, is longevity. There are some things you can do such that you live longer. And, you know, you can take care of your health better, you can see doctors. I mean, there are a variety of strategies, eat better, exercise, all of that. I'm sure you've all heard this. But that doesn't ensure you're going to live a longer life. However, it can help out in doing so and live a longer, healthier life as well. Because healthcare costs can become very expensive if you are, you know, very ill later in life. And again, doing something to help yourself in terms of, you know, eating right or following doctor's orders can help out in that.
And what else, Marion? What else do we have control over?
And the other thing earlier on, I guess I went backwards on that one, is employment. So what you earn, you can choose to work longer. You can choose to change jobs and earn more money. You can choose to go back to school and potentially get a better job. So there are a variety of ways you can influence your earnings. Maybe not completely, but you do have some control over that.
And that's what we call the retirement equation. Focusing on things you can control, recognizing what's out of your control, and then again, recognizing where you do have some control. Frankly, that's what we call financial advice in a language you can understand. Now's the time for you to get serious about your financial planning and investment management needs. We hope you'll reach out and give us a call, 978-531-8108. That's 978-531-8108. Or you can go and visit us on that thing called the World Wide Web, where you can find out everything you want about Freedman Financial, who we are, the services we charge, the fees we charge, who our appropriate clients are. You know, we don't serve everybody. We want to serve individuals and families. If you fall into the categories of the people we serve, check out our website. I think you'll really enjoy it. And of course, you can sign up for our free weekly newsletter that lands in your inbox every Friday at 10:30 in the morning. We've been sending this out since March of 2009. How do you get all the information? go to our website, freedmanfinancial.com. That's Freedman.
2 E's in a D.
Financial.com. Go to the bottom of any page, like I said, name and email. You'll get our newsletter, and that's going to do it this week. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for listening to Dollars and Cents. Have a great week, everyone.
Have a great day.
During today's episode of Dollars and Cents with Freedman Financial, your host may have discussed specific financial planning and investment ideas that are for general information only and not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations. Please remember that investing involves risk and may include loss of principal. Always consult a certified financial planner professional, qualified attorney, or tax advisor prior to investing to determine what is appropriate for you. Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member FINRA, SIPC.